And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Sunday's ice analysis looking something like this here. Still some thin ice along the central Arctic coast and another batch here on the eastern Arctic coast there. And so really not much change here from yesterday to today, and there probably won't be much change from today to tomorrow. So looking at today's chart again, low pressure rain fronts bringing, or low pressure in the frontal system bringing rain into the interior today, all the way into the Fairbanks area, kind of tapering off here over the southeast interior. And no rain, just a lot of mid and high level clouds coming in across south central Alaska with some sun down toward Bristol Bay, southern Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Some rain is down as far south as at least Nikolai and McGrath there currently, and a little bit of rain up to the Alaska Peninsula. Actually, this is for tonight. And then for Monday, we've got rain again, periods of and showers, cloudy skies, and temperatures in the 50s and 60s up over the central northern interior. 60s, lower 70s in the forecast for southern Alaska here, where there's more sunshine, light winds everywhere actually, especially over the southeast Bering Sea under that area of high pressure, and partly mostly sunny skies again for the Panhandle, and temperatures probably back into the 60s and lower 70s. 60s 5 to 75 south central Alaska, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, near 70 in Bristol Bay. Dry for Kodiak, southeast Bering Sea, and the Aleutians. Continued light wind conditions, and moisture continues to track eastward here with this next front coming down, bringing more rain Monday night and Tuesday into the western Arctic coast, spreading eastward throughout the day, Tuesday and Tuesday afternoon. And for the coastal water forecast, small craft advisories on the south coast, northwest winds 25 knots, northwest 20 to 25 knots. On the central coast, north coast, west-northwest at 15. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, north at 10 for the day Monday, northwest at 10 for Stevens Passage, and northwest 15 for Clarence Strait. For Tuesday, south coast, small craft advisories, northwest 25 knots, 20 knots on the central coast out of the northwest, and west-northwest 10 to 15 on the north coast. And for Lynn Canal, southeast winds 15 knots, but northwest 10 knots here for the central and southern inside waters. Light variable winds for Prince William Sound tomorrow at about 10 knots, seas 2 feet or less. And west-southwest winds 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast with 4-foot seas. Light variable winds for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay at about 10 knots. Cook Inlet, south to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots with seas 3 to 5 feet. And for Tuesday, variable winds 10 knots for Cook Inlet, variable at 10 for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. Prince William Sound, variable winds 10 knots for Tuesday. North Gulf Coast, light variable winds at 10 knots. Kodiak Island tomorrow, variable winds 10 knots for Shelikof Strait, otherwise southeast at 15. And mostly north to northeast 15 to 20 knot winds for the Alaska Peninsula. Light northeast wind at 10 knots for Bristol Bay. And for the outlook on Tuesday, Kodiak Island, light variable winds at 10 knots. And the Alaska Peninsula here, east winds at 15, southwest 10 for Bristol Bay. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, north to northwest winds at 15 knots. Adak and Atka looking at southeast winds at 15 knots. And then south to southeast, 15 to 20 knot winds for the western Aleutians. And for the day Tuesday here, Kiska to Shimia, light variable winds out that way. Seas just 4 feet out there. And for the area west of Adak, actually Atka Island to Amchitka, east-southeast at 15 knots. Eastern Aleutians, east winds 15 to 20 knots. And for the southwest coast, Monday, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. South at 20 for St. Matthew Island with 8-foot seas. Pribilof's looking at southwest breeze at about 15 and southwest 15 knots, St. Lawrence Island, but southwest at 20 knots here for Norton Sound. And for Tuesday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, southwest wind 20 knots, northwest at 10 here for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, and southwest 15 Yukon Delta coast. Light variable winds for the Pribilof, seas down to 3 feet for Tuesday, and south at 20 knots for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds east tomorrow, 15 knots, northwest 15 on the central coast, southwest 15 west side here. And for the Chukchi Sea, variable winds 10 to maybe 20 knots. Chux on Tuesday, southwest and northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Zone of small craft advisories here for the western Arctic coast with that next front dropping on in, so a little gusty behind the front, up to 25 knots there. And central coast south at 20, south to southeast winds 15 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.